I call to order this hearing of the Readiness and Seapower Projection Forces, Seapower and Projection Forces subcommittees on posture and readiness of the mobility enterprise. I ask unanimous consent that the chair be authorized to declare a recess at any time. Without objection, so ordered. Good morning, and welcome to our joint hearing on the posture of our mobility enterprise. I think this is probably one of the most important hearings that we will have this posture season. I want to thank you, especially to our witnesses, for participating today. I look forward to your testimony. And the reason, amongst many, that I feel that this is so important is the Indo-Pacific as a priority theater. We've all talked many times, and I don't think we can ever fully appreciate the tyranny of distance that will strain our platforms, our people, our material, our fuel laydown, all of the things that support the mobility enterprise, and we will face struggles on all of these fronts. With the pending closure of Red Hill in Hawaii, we are forced to examine our fuel laydown across the Indo-Pacific and across other COCOM areas of responsibility. Congress designated TRANSCOM as the DoD executive agent for our bulk fuel management, and TRANSCOM will serve an important role in moving that fuel forward to support our strategic operations. Moving fuel, in particular for air operations, is a strategic capability that cannot be neglected. Replacing our aging airlift and air refueling platforms is complicated. We have struggled, frankly, in some areas. We must ensure availability of legacy platforms until their replacements reach full operational capability. And for that reason, Congress has established statutory minimums for both the airlift and air refueling fleets to ensure we have needed capacity. Our MARAD and military sealift command fleets are also in a similar state. Recapitalization of our sealift fleet that we will rely on to carry ground platforms and material into theater is a pressing issue. Crewing these vessels is also of great concern. We have a significant shortage of credentialed mariners that, combined with an incredibly poor and concerning state of our vessels, have resulted in a less than impressive, and that's an understatement, less than impressive readiness rates during recent exercises. We will also rely on this same pool of credentialed mariners to crew commercial vessels in the Maritime Security Program and the Tanker Security Program. We have a tough road ahead, and I look forward to hearing how MARAD plans to administer these important programs and bolster the number of credentialed mariners. I would also like to highlight an important issue for our service members. TRANSCOM administers the Defense Personnel Property Program that moves and stores service members' household goods during their change of station moves. We ask so much of our military members, and we ask even more of their families. And General Van Ovost, we've had many conversations about reducing the stress on our family members as they're moving. I look forward to hearing you address those program changes today. I remain concerned about a single point of failure in having one prime contractor in the new global household goods contract, and will continue to emphasize that oversight from both TRANSCOM and Congress will be an important part of implementing that program. In closing, our ability to execute logistical functions in a contested environment will define our ability to succeed in any future strategic competition. We are seeing today a global lesson on the failure of logistics with Russia, with the Russian military in Ukraine. We must get this right, and we must ensure that we can move, sustain, and fuel U.S. forces to meet any scenario. With that, I look forward to hearing whether the FY24 budget request meets that task, and I yield to the ranking member.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, Chairman Waltz. It's an honor to be here today as Vice Ranking Member. General Van Ovost, it was great meeting you this past Friday. that's a fellow grad as well, and Admiral Phillips. Thank you for coming before our committee to discuss the important work for the Maritime Administration. Strategic mobility has always been a strength of the United States, unmatched by any adversary. TRANSCOM has the unique ability to work across combatant commands, our services, the private sector, and our allies to achieve both military and diplomatic goals of the United States. Most recently, since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, TRANSCOM has transported equipment, artillery, armor, troops, and other aid that has made a critical difference for Ukrainians fighting against Russian aggression. But despite having unparalleled capabilities and strategic mobility, China and Russia are catching up, not just in the Indo-Pacific Command theater, but in Southern Command, in Africa Command as well. Russia and China have done much to expand cyber and anti-access area denial capabilities, along with expanding their geopolitical influence across the globe. And in this critical time, our airlift, sealift, and air refueling capabilities are aging, and we're critically short on civilian mariners. Now, more than ever, it is critical that TRANSCOM and MARAD have the resources they need to ensure we retain our advantage. I look forward to hearing your views on how we can ensure our mobility enterprise remains unmatched across the globe. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. And now I yield to Chairman Kelly for his opening statement.
Chairman Waltz, thank you for your leadership in leading this morning's posture hearing. Today we'll hear from two leaders who are experts in their fields. I thank you both for your service to the nation. TRANSCOM's charter is to project and sustain combat power whenever and wherever our nation chooses. As I think on that problem set and the multiple adversaries we face, it is a daunting challenge and deserving of congressional support. Conflicts are won or lost primarily because of logistics. We need to look no further than Russia's recent logistical blunders to prove this point. Notably, TRANSCOM's accomplishments supporting the Ukraine war and the earthquakes in Turkey and Spain have been amazing and done in addition to their day job. TRANSCOM has also assumed the role of Department of Defense single manager for global bulk fuel management and delivery. This mission represents a different approach to managing bulk fuel, and I look forward to hearing how it is going. I remain concerned with our aging sealift and air refueling fleet. This year's budget increase includes money to purchase 2 additional sealift assets, but the fleet remains, on average, too old. This is especially critical because, as Mr. Waltz or Chairman Waltz mentioned, recent exercises with these reserve fleets were concerning. MARAD is also an organization punching above their weight. We are happy with the success of the Tanker Security Program and would like to hear your thoughts on the increasing capacity. Inter- and intra-theater mobility will be key to sustainment in the Indo-PACOM area of responsibility, and the 10 ships in the program are just the tip of the iceberg. We need to be prioritizing this capability today. Finally, I'm concerned with merchant mariners, readiness, and how we can increase the pool of credentialed mariners, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts about recruitment and retention. The FY24 budget requests for TRANSCOM and MARAD show us the problem is not getting easier. I want to thank our witnesses in advance for their time today. I look forward to continuing work with you during the 118th Congress to ensure that we are appropriately postured to meet and defeat the threats posed by our adversaries. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. And now I yield to Ranking Member Courtney.
Thank you, Chairman Waltz, and thank you, Chairman Kelly, and my good friend, the Vice Ranking Member, Mr. Davis, in terms of your opening remarks. Again, I think Mr. Waltz stated it on target, where he said that today it's all about the logistics of airlift and sealift, particularly when we're talking about a part of the world that is as vast as the Indo-Pacific region, where supply lines are going to be severely tested. And we've got 2 great witnesses here today. To quote Omar Bradley, amateurs talk strategy, professionals talk logistics. We have 2 ultimate and total professionals here to share their thoughts in terms of their critical agencies in terms of how we solve this problem. I would note that, you know, these two committees have, in my opinion, a very strong record over the last 6 years in terms of addressing issues like the tanker security program, which did not exist prior to 2020. It was actually authorization language that came out of the Seapower Mark that year, which was like crawling over broken glass, getting it through the Senate, but we did it. And we also got a matching appropriation last year so that we now actually have real funds so that, again, MARAD can go out and solicit providers. In my mind, that is Congress at its best, following its duty under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 13 of the Congress, of the Constitution, which states that Congress shall provide and maintain a Navy. Again, that TSP program started right here, and as Mr. Kelly said, you know, we really should be looking for ways to size it up further in this year's FY24. I would note that the other sort of issue, which again others have alluded to, is the aging maritime fleet, which again is, we've heard all the statistics, you know, over 50 years old. You know, we've had issues even with delivery of supplies to Ukraine in terms of breakdowns because of some of the fleet there, and you know, it just screams out for action. I am disappointed, I have to tell you, having read both your testimony, about the fact that, in my opinion, one of the most promising Made in America programs was barely mentioned, which again originated in these two committees, is being administered by MARAD. It's the Maritime Training Ship Multi-Mission Vessel, which is now underway in the Philly shipyard. Again, these are 525-foot ships that displace 19,000 tons that, again, will be there to train our future maritime officers, which is, again, something that we must do. But it is multi-mission. If an emergency happens, those boats can be converted into emergency delivery, whether it's first responders or whether it's military equipment or personnel. And this program, again, at a time when the commercial tonnage in this country has just almost disappeared, shows that we can do it in this country. Again, the Empire State is going to be launched later this summer, and there's 4 right in sequence after it. I would encourage all of the members to take a quick trip up to the Philly shipyard. It was almost down to 20 workers when this program started. It's 2,000 today. And the fact is they can take on more after they are done with this maritime training ship procurement, which is to basically have a Made in America sea lift. We do not need to be buying ships overseas on the used market. When do we learn the lesson of COVID that international supply chains cannot be relied on in terms of price or accessibility? And we need to bring back the commercial and shipyard sector in this country. And we showed with this program that we can do it. So again, as I said, there was one bare mention of this program, even though MARAD is, in my opinion, the hero here in terms of executing this program. And the fact is, it should show us a model for how we try to solve the very serious problems which Chairman Waltz started. And I apologize for going on here, but again, we have work to do. And the good news is it's not hopeless. We can do it. And with that, I yield back.
No apologies needed, Mr. Courtney. I think the last briefing I received, there were over 50,000 Chinese flagged vessels and now less than 5,000 U.S. So this is a strategic vulnerability, and I look forward to all of us working together on it. Shouldn't be such a hard push to get our domestic shipbuilding back to where it needs to be and how the commercial drives the national security. So again, I'd like to thank our witnesses for their time and for joining us. Today we're joined by General Van Ovost, Commander of Transportation Command, Rear Admiral Phillips, Administrator of MARAD, and now I would like to recognize General Van Ovost for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Waltz, Chairman Kelly, Vice Ranking Member Davis, and Ranking Member Courtney. Distinguished members of the committees, good morning. It's my honor to join you today with my senior enlisted leader, Fleet Master Chief Donald Myrick, to represent the men and women of the United States Transportation Command as we defend the nation, take care of our people, and succeed through teamwork. I'm extremely proud of our team of logistics professionals who lead the Joint Deployment and Distribution Enterprise, continually exceed expectations, and ensure hope, deterrence, and victory are assured as we contribute to our nation's defense. From competition to crisis, the entire enterprise proudly delivers for our nation, our allies, and our partners. We know our success in the European theater and beyond would not be possible without the steadfast support of these committees and the whole of Congress. To maintain the unrivaled strategic advantage to project and sustain the joint force over global distances through natural disasters, pandemics, conflicts, peace, and war while defending the homeland, we must preserve our logistical dominance. Our organic fleet, along with our commercial transportation partners, must continue to present credible deterrence and requires proactive efforts to recapitalize and modernize. My highest concerns lie in the reductions in capacity and readiness in both sea lift and air refueling. We are a generation late in recapitalizing a ready sea lift fleet to meet our national objectives. The average age of the 44 roll-on, roll-off ships that we use to surge from the continental United States is 44 years old. In fact, 17 of these 44 ships are 50 years or older. Transcom supports the Navy's strategy to acquire used sea lift vessels from the commercial market and further requests to provide the Secretary of Defense discretionary authority to purchase foreign-built used ships under favorable market conditions and without limitation on number. I greatly appreciate your support for stabilized funding towards our sea lift recapitalization effort, and I'm heartened by the current progress on the first 5 ships. We've also taken steps to address the department's shortfall in meeting wartime fuel delivery demands and the vulnerable position of continued reliance on the use of foreign-flagged, foreign-crewed tanker vessels. We are working with MARAD to implement the Tanker Security Program, which will provide assured access to the U.S.-flagged tankers and begin to reduce risk in sea lift tanker capacity. In addition to the Tanker Security Program, we fully support the Maritime Security Program, the Jones Act, and cargo preference laws that all work together to ensure we have the necessary U.S. flag capability and U.S. mariners during peacetime and ready to move sensitive defense materials during a national emergency. In every domain, American workers are critical to joint force transportation and logistics. In particular, maritime stakeholders have been experiencing challenges with recruiting and retaining mariners. We support MARAD and industry efforts to identify strategies that address the mariner shortage and ensure their readiness. In the air refueling fleet is the backbone of rapid global mobility and our most stressed capability. Transcom supports the Air Force's continued efforts towards focused modernization of the fleet, uninterrupted tanker recapitalization, and accelerated pursuit of the next-generation air refueling system to ensure our capacity and readiness remains credible to cover simultaneous global requirements. Future operations will also require high degrees of battlespace awareness and leveraging data to align scarce mobility resources with the greatest strategic need. Integration into battle networks, resource and cryptographic modernization, cybersecurity, and ensuring resilient position, navigation, and timing are among my top priorities. Just as we are engaged globally in supporting DoD operations, the Global Household Good Contract is our flagship transformational effort and will bring accountability that does not exist in the current program of dispersed vendors. We owe it to our members and their families to ensure that they have the best relocation experience we can provide. I'm honored to join Rear Admiral Phillips, U.S. Navy retired, and thank her for her 30-plus years of service to our country and her commitment to our nation's security. I'd like to thank you once again for your leadership and the support you provide our workforce. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General Ovost. Rear Admiral Phillips, your opening statement.
Chairman Waltz, Chairman Kelly, Ranking Member Courtney, Ranking Member Garamendi, Vice Ranking Member Davis, members of the subcommittee. Thank you for your tremendous support for the Maritime Administration, including our Ready Reserve Force, the Merchant Marine Academy, and the U.S. maritime industry. And thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. As a retired U.S. Navy admiral with more than 30 years of military service, I knew before becoming the Maritime Administrator how critical our merchant marine and our entire maritime industry are to our national defense as well as our economy. Now, having led the Great MARAD team for just under a year, I can tell you this agency is meeting many historic moments as we work to promote the merchant marine and strengthen all facets of the maritime industry. We are administering a once-in-a-generation investment in our nation's ports and waterways made possible by the President's bipartisan infrastructure law. We are working to advance culture change throughout the merchant marine. We are advancing long overdue recapitalization of our aging Ready Reserve force. Let me begin by discussing the Ready Reserve, an area of our focus today. America's strategic sea lift enables our nation to protect power globally, including through congested environments, whenever activated by U.S. Transportation Command, led by General Jacqueline Van Ovost. I am honored to join you with her here today. The Ready Reserve is a fleet of 45 vessels with an average age of more than 45 years. It will grow to more than 50 vessels after a planned transfer of additional vessels from the Military Sea Lift Command is complete later this year. MARAD will then be the single sea lift surge provider. The President's FY24 budget requests $809.6 million from DoD budgetary authority for MARAD to acquire, upgrade, and maintain the Ready Reserve. Due to the advancing age of these ships, I will tell you that sustaining safety, material condition, regulatory compliance, and the challenges of equipment, parts delays, and increased scope of needed repairs, including steel work, make repairing these ships difficult and challenging. MARAD is working to implement RRF recapitalization, and in March 2022, for the first time in nearly 30 years, we announced purchase of 2 vessels, which will add more than 316,000 square feet of military cargo capacity. Earlier this year, DoD transmitted to Congress our intent to purchase 3 more ships, with reflagging and entry to the Ready Reserve beginning in April 2023. But this is just the start of needed overall recapitalization. In addition, MARAD provides ships from the National Defense Reserve Fleet as training vessels for the 6 state maritime academies. We are working to replace these training vessels with new vessels that will meet the needs of the academies and provide training for our mariner workforce. There are now 4 NSMVs under construction, and the first ship, the Empire State, is launched. We anticipate taking delivery of her later this year. MARAD's FY24 budget requests full authorization of $318 million for 60 vessels enrolled in the Maritime Security Program, and further requests $60 million at the authorized level for the Tanker Security Program. As promised, MARAD issued the interim final rule for the Tanker Security Program last year, and we anticipate announcing the first 10 vessels selected for enrollment soon. The initiative will also create new employment for approximately 500 U.S. mariners. Last fall, I hosted a summit with industry and federal stakeholders to discuss the mariner shortfall, and we will continue to work with our partners to help grow and strengthen the mariner pool. On that front, one thing is clear. Everyone in this industry must continue the critical effort to ensure mariner work environments are safe, and that the maritime industry is a place where mariners can succeed on the basis of their professionalism and skill. In support of that effort, the President's fiscal year 24 request will also enable MARAD to continue to address urgent and long-standing challenges at the Merchant Marine Academy, including implementing the many new authorities and responsibilities provided in the FY23 NDAA. Specifically, funding will enable us to continue our work implementing the Every Mariner Builds a Respectful Culture program and help meet the Academy's extensive facility maintenance and repair needs. As you know, MARAD established the Embark program in December 2021 to help prevent sexual assault and harassment during the Sea Year program, to support survivors, strengthen a culture of accountability, and improve safety for all mariners. Now, thanks to the FY 2023 NDAA, commercially operated vessels must, by law, comply with sexual assault and harassment prevention and response standards set by MARAD before they can train Academy cadets. MARAD is working as quickly as possible to develop an Embark rule pursuant to the NDAA. I note that today there are 16 commercial operators enrolled in Embark, and together they operate more than 140 vessels. Thank you for the opportunity to present and discuss the President's budget for MARAD, and I look forward to any questions you and the members of the subcommittee may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator. Thank you both for your testimony. I now recognize myself for questions. General Van Ovost, we've had a number of conversations about global household goods and that transition. I continue to hear from the moving industry, and I'm trying to figure out where this disconnect is from your assurance that I've received from you and your team and the concerns that I'm hearing about the transition risk to this program for military moves. I've heard from, including just as recently as yesterday, from numerous moving service providers that they can't plan for what their work share is going to be over the next year, that they don't have agreements in place with the prime contractor, that they don't have pricing in place so that they can budget. And I talked to one van line that is going to just walk away from doing business with the government. So how are you considering, and this is, I know we've had conversations, but I think it's important to get out there for the public record, the capacity of the moving industry in its planning phases for global household goods is one question. And then two, you know, I know we've talked about you running the old program and the new program in parallel, and you've assured me you will hit the brakes on the new program if things aren't moving as they need to move and they aren't transitioning. But I think what we're missing is, I don't know that there's going to be anybody left in that old program and any backup plan to go to. So how are you planning for that loss of capacity in the moving industry that is just shifting rapidly over to the private sector and away from government moves?
Thank you for the question. As you know, there's no more important program for our family members, and so we absolutely have to make sure we get this right, which is why we have extensive oversight. In fact, as HomeSafe has come on, as you know, in November, we were given the green light and we're moving forward. They started here in March their campaign to go to regional areas and start to explain the implementation plan, their framework, and how they're going to move forward. We are dealing with the final rates right now, not just for HomeSafe, but as you mentioned, the tender of service program, where we have those 900 tenders, is going to continue on, and we're going to work it in parallel. In other words, as we bring up HomeSafe, we're going to start to dial back the current tender of service program. Our rates for the tender of service program come out traditionally about now, I believe in the next few weeks it'll come out, and that will be about the same time you'll probably see it with HomeSafe as well, so that they have this understanding of, and so HomeSafe will be able to provide them the full plan. They've provided the framework and how this is going to work, but they'll be able to do the final deals coming up here as the rates come out. So, you know, I am not aware of people shying away from being part of this capacity. You know, anecdotally, the rollout seems to be going okay. We are at all of those events. In fact, we talk daily with HomeSafe on their ability to gain the capacity and to move forward. We are working on the IT. We're working on the claims process.
General, sorry, just for the sake of getting to other members, I would just encourage you to talk directly to some of these lower tiers. Again, I'm trying to level set the disconnect, but what they're saying is they're hearing a lot of conceptual frameworks and concepts, but you know, the rubber having run a business, the rubber meets the road when they need to sharpen their pencils and figure out if this still makes sense for their company as a sub.
Yep.
So I would just encourage you to reach out directly. And Admiral Phillips, can we just talk a minute about the mariner shortage? Do you have, if the balloon went up for some type of global contingency and we had to send out the ready reserve fleet, could you staff even 50 ships? Could you, with the growth from 45 to 50, could you staff all of those ships with mariners today? Because we're pulling from the same pool of credentialed mariners to crew both the Sea Lift fleet and any commercial vessels needed for future large-scale military operations. Are you confident all of those ships will be manned?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question. I am not confident all those ships would be manned. I think I should be extremely straightforward there. We know we have a mariner shortfall. The last numbers we have predate COVID. They are an estimated 1,800 in an uncontested environment over a 6-month cycle of activating the ready reserve. As you state, we're competing with active ships. We're competing with our U.S. flag vessels, our 85 internationally trading, privately owned foreign trading vessels. And the Merchant Marine and the Ready Reserve Force are aging vessels. That means there are skill sets required to operate some of them, those remaining that are steam, as an example, that not a lot of mariners have right now. I will add that one of our biggest challenges is understanding exactly, as you point out, who do we have, what qualifications do they have, and will they sail? So therein lies our large challenge. As mentioned in my testimony, I have convened last fall 75 stakeholders to talk about what we wanted to do about this across industry and labor. We settled on 4 lines of effort: recruit, train, retain, and reduce barriers, and we are working in each of those sectors to try to make a difference.
Everyone here should find that incredibly alarming. That is a red star cluster. That is a blinking red light. First of all, I don't know that all the ships would even sail, frankly, according to some exercises, and yet we don't have the mariners. So can you just, I don't want to take up too much time, but I think it's an incredibly important issue. We've gone from the first Gulf War to about 400 ships, now to 40, and now we can't even staff the 40. And these are the ships we need to move our ground forces all over the world. Specifically, how are you going to rely on private providers, and how can we help you with private providers, in addition to the academies, produce more mariners in this country?
So thank you for that question also, Mr. Chairman. As you know, we have a Centers of Excellence program within the Maritime Administration where we may designate institutions that train mariners as centers of excellence. In the 2023 NDAA, we received an authorization to support a grant program by which we could provide them perhaps additional capacity. We would have to develop and design that program. Unfortunately, that program was not appropriated. There was no money put against it. So we are able to designate centers of excellence. However, we can't provide them any additional funding at this point in time. I would also add that we work closely with labor, with the union schools, both licensed and unlicensed. They are certainly intent on expanding their capacity. And I would add that in order for them to do that, we have to have ships for those mariners to sail on, because it's incumbent upon having a flow of mariners, a pull of mariners, and a consistent need to be able to justify to people why they want to come into this community and into this industry and why they want to stay there.
Thank you, Admiral Phillips. Ranking Member Davis.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I would always recognize our great leader, our ranking member. So always great to see you, sir. General Van Ovost, I have a question we'd like to start out with today. We've seen the impact of years of under-resourcing sustainment across the jurisdiction of the Readiness Subcommittee. This is affecting every military department and trickles down to our soldiers, sailors, and airmen. Can you please describe to us how the lack of resources towards air and ship sustainment affects TRANSCOM?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Readiness we demonstrate readiness every day around the globe in all of our operations, as recently as Ukraine and earthquake relief. But I am concerned about long-term readiness. Our ability to ensure that all of our fleets can meet their mission capable or availability rates. And the consistent underfunding does erode. So what we absolutely require to ensure our readiness into the future is consistent funding, a budget on time, because a CR, continuing resolution, is one of the ways it absolutely erodes our capabilities and our ability to do new starts and to develop modernization and implement modernization programs that will ensure our capacity is credible out into the future. So I would ask for the budget to be on time and for your support of continued readiness fundings throughout all the services for our equipment.
Okay. And General Van Ovost, as China and Russia have expanded cyber and anti-access area denial capabilities, what concerns does TRANSCOM have regarding Chinese or Russian investments in ports and the potential limitation those impose on TRANSCOM's options for providing strategic lift into theater?
Thank you for that question. I tell you, cyber operations pose significant threats to logistics. They target vulnerable supply chains. They go after our command and control structure, and their ability to disrupt, delay, or even deny our ability to move around the globe is a serious concern from the cyber perspective. So we're doing a lot of work both on the military side and with our commercial partners to ensure we have cybersecurity and we're hardened from those elements.
And how is TRANSCOM planning to ensure key logistics nodes remain active and resilient in a contested environment? And in a contested environment, what efforts has TRANSCOM made with combatant commands to identify alternative ports of disembarkation?
Yeah, alternative points, resilience in our ports, in our nodes, for the full network, our lines of communication, things like posture, both for fuel on the water as well as fuel distribution points, and pre-positioned storage forward and distributed locations where it's not a target are some of the many things we're doing with posture. Of course, we could not project and sustain the joint force without our allies and partners, which provide us that access, spacing, and overflight, and opportunities to enter into agreements where we'll be able to forward provision. In other words, provide other ways to get support to our forces forward. And I would also want to be reluctant to mention that we couldn't also do this without our commercial partners, our airlift and sealift partners around the globe that ensure that not just our networks and allies and partners networks are resilient, but their networks are as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll yield back.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, first I just want to say we need to continue the trend in the right direction that we have right now, which means more newer operational ships and planes in our fleet that are manned by crews that are capable of carrying out those duties. And I kind of go back to Kevin Costner in Field of Dreams when he said, build it and they will come. If we don't have ships that are operational, I can assure you we will not have mariners to man those ships. So I think those things go hand in hand. And General Van Ovost, in your statement, you identify the inventory of 466 total air refueling aircraft as sufficient, but at an elevated risk. Should the Air Force increase the total number of tankers in its inventory?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, air refueling is absolutely critical to our ability to rapidly deploy forces around the globe, and it's really foundational, and it is our asymmetric advantage. So we want to be able to preserve that capacity, which also means we have to preserve the readiness. So while we have found that our assessment against the National Defense Strategy makes the 466 total inventory sufficient at an elevated level of risk, I am concerned about the readiness of this aging fleet, and I'm fully supportive of the Air Force plan to accelerate the next generation air refueling system so that we can develop a system that can operate in these highly contested environments. Meanwhile, continue an uninterrupted recapitalization of the KC-135 refueler, and then targeted modernization to ensure that airplane, when we get the last KC-46 right now that's on contract, those airplanes will be 67 years old and we'll have 287 of them. So we got to make sure that they're credible and they're ready. So their readiness, modernization, and ability to see the battle space on board and secure connections, some very targeted capabilities that ensure our capability in the future.
Thank you. And Rear Admiral Phillips, can you preview the timeline and next steps for the tanker security program?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. We expect to be able to announce the next 10 vessels very shortly. We anticipate we'll be able to announce them. We look forward to doing that. As you are aware, we owe a report as a result of the 2023 NDAA that will help outline how we want to move forward with the program, particularly in the context of how we will man the program, train mariners to support the console needs, and deploy and implement the console needs and requirements for this program. You're also aware we have an authorization to go to 20 ships in 2024. We anticipate being able to do that, and we, in our budget request, believe that we will have funding to be able to support 20 ships based on existing funding for the year 2024. After that, we will need funding that would support maintaining a 20-ship fleet at this point in time.
And General Van Ovost, just real quickly, I think you talked a little bit how you envision addressing the requirements for transporting fuel within theater and other fuel distribution needs with smaller capacity vessels. So if you want to add anything to that, but keep it real quick because I have one more question. And how many of these vessels will we need to be ready?
Certainly, for number of vessels, the tanker security program is a first good step. We did submit a classified study that has those information for inter-theater and intra-theater. So I appreciate your support. You listened to the concerns and you responded, and you've already brought down some of our operational risk But the entire fuel system now, we need to look at it from an end-to-end perspective. We have not done that before, and that's the role of U.S. Transportation Command, to be able to synchronize across there to ensure that in a contested environment, we'll be able to deliver fuel to the warfighter.
And then finally, General Van Ovost, the increasing age of our sea-lift vessels is making recapitalization of this fleet a more pressing issue. The President's request seeks funds to purchase 2 used sea-lift vessels for commercial industry, but is this 2 vessels per year enough? And double tapping on what Ranking Member Courtney said, do we also need to be building some of those vessels, and what is the plan that we should be doing to have some so that we can know and that the suppliers can know how many ships they need to build in the future?
Thank you, sir. Look, 2 a year is a great start, but at 2 a year, we will not be able to not finish recapitalization until about 2032. And when I think about the work and the decisive decade, we must be able to recover the capacity and the readiness of those ships. So I advocate for an accelerated rate when the conditions are favorable. And then with respect to a build new strategy, that could absolutely be part of the longer strategy and into the future. But I want to make sure that, again, near term, again, 17 of 44 ships are already over 50 or over, and they'll just continue to get older and older. So anything we can do to accelerate the recap while considering in the future would be helpful.
And just a final comment, I really think we need to get a greater sense of urgency. I don't think 2032 or 2035 or 2030 is a year. I think we need to be preparing for 2028 at the latest. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly, and I certainly second those remarks. I think we are consistently seeing a disconnect between the timelines the intelligence community is giving us and then the timelines for a number of these programs to maintain deterrence. Ranking Member Courtney.
Thank you, Chairman Waltz. And one timeline, which again, Admiral Phillips, you did allude to in your testimony, and I appreciate it, was that right now at the Philly shipyard, there are 4 vessels under construction. Again, that cadence is swift and on schedule. I mean, really, Mr. Whitman and I deal with a lot of shipbuilding programs over the year. There haven't been too many where particularly the lead ship was on time and under budget, and yet that's exactly what's happening there. And, you know, I would like to just sort of drill down for a second on the fact that, you know, something's going on there that's different than what the Navy had proposed in terms of its recapitalization efforts, which is that there's a different contracting model that, again, MARAD and our committee work together to put into place, which is a vessel construction manager. That's a private sector model, which, again, tries to, you know, shrink the requirements, you know, just, you know, get on schedule, fixed price, as delivered and designed, and that's working, as I said. And I mean, you would agree with that, right? I mean, that's really the core of why that program is so promising.
Yes, sir, we would agree with that. It is on time, it is on budget.
So last year's NDAA, we authorized 10 sea-lift new constructions using the vessel construction manager model. Again, passed both chambers. President Biden signed it into law. Unfortunately, there's no funding in the budget. Instead, we're going into, again, the commercial market, which is 2 used vessels that are here. I mean, I certainly am ready to do everything I can to talk to appropriators about the fact that, you know, we really should not just put all our eggs in the commercial market, which I would just say that, you know, certainly we are hearing anecdotally that the price and availability is not steady right now in terms of what's out there. And if, again, 2032 is the end date. I mean, to sort of put our eggs in that basket in terms of how we're going to recapitalize the fleet, I think is just very risky. One request that I would make, and then I'll yield, is just that this committee deserves better information in terms of what's out there in terms of the commercial market. If you're asking us to authorize 2 more used vessels in commercial market and have that as the pattern in the coming years, we need to get some visibility in terms of what that market looks like. Because as I said, the input that we're getting from industry is that this is not something that you can really count on as a steady state in terms of a horizon. Whereas by building them in the U.S., We know exactly what the cost is, and we know exactly what the timeline is. That's a less risky strategy in terms of addressing this issue. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Courtney. I look forward to working with Seapower Committee on that, because I agree. I think we're seeing a pricing issue in the United States. The only way to get at it and get at the labor shortages is to actually reinvigorate the market. So with that, I yield to Mr. Whitman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our witnesses for joining us. General Van Ovost, Rear Admiral Phillips, thanks again for all the great work that you all do. General Van Ovost, I want to begin with you. As you look at the O plans in theater, my concern centers around this: the logistics behind getting and sustaining the Army and the Marine Corps in any sort of scenario that we look at in that particular theater. And can you give me an idea, what types of delays will you experience in being able to put forward all the necessary elements of personnel and materials and supplies and ammunition in that scenario? And in my mind, it's particularly acute for those forces that are CONUS-based, because we know the logistics of having to do that. All you have to do is to look at the logistics of what we went through in the first Gulf War and trying to get everything there to Kuwait, which took a long period of time with massive numbers of ships, which we don't have today. And how successful do you think TRANSCOM will be in the case of a dislodgement campaign with Taiwan? It's different than having things in theater. If you have to be able to push things in a contested environment, the whole scenario changes. Give me your perspective on how those challenges have to be dealt with by TRANSCOM.
Well, thanks for that question. That is something that keeps us up. But this is what we do. We analyze the national defense strategy against the plans to execute to meet our national objectives. And here's what we learned. In a contested environment, just about every aspect of mobility's risk will increase if not sufficiently mitigated. So we have gone about to understand where the highest risks are, and we're getting after them. So on the posture side, as you mentioned, what does late look like? It looks like, how do you forward position in multiple distributed locations, both on the land and on the water, with our squadrons of our prepo on the water? It's how do we have multiple nodes, multiple seaports and airports that we can use as little lily pads to work forward? How do we reposture the fuel where it makes sense to be able to put it both on the water and in locations that we're going to have ready access to it during conflict? And how do I have ready capacity that can actually fight through contested logistics, meaning cyber, GPS interference, the survivability aspects, PNT, and as we pull all those together, I have to be able to understand and sense the battle and be able to move the highest priority stuff to meet the Joint Force Commander's needs. So I think about our ability to understand the data, to use AI to try to sense the fields and sense the nodes so that we can apply the right capacity at the right time. So it's challenging, but it's absolutely doable, and we are working at it. In fact, this summer, in the large-scale global exercise, which is about a 120-day period in the Indo-Pacific, where we have not only joint exercises, but service-specific exercises. In fact, next week we have one with the Army that's looking at their multi-domain task force and how we're moving around. I'm sending my deputy out there to understand and to try to make sure that we can link in and help them in their maneuver, because they're maneuvering and they need sustainment.
In that realm, in the contested logistics area of Indo-PACOM, how important is the Marine Corps LSM in being able to deliver intra-theater logistics? And in that realm, how important is the capability of LSM to self-defend versus other threat defense logistics that could otherwise be put out there for the LSM? And the LSM, by the way, is landing ship medium for the
Formerly known as
the law. Yeah, because it's not a warship. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, look, thanks for that question. It's super important that as the Joint Deployment and Distribution Enterprise, that we synchronize from end to end. So all service concepts have to be exercised, and we have to be able to get to the LSM to be able to support them. We have to understand where they're going to maneuver in the first and second island chain, where do they expect to get their fuel and their provisionings and their ammunition. And that's exactly what we're doing this summer. Their concepts of operation are not yet solid, but we have been providing advice all along the way on how we'd be able to work with them. And again, that's some of the work that we're doing here this summer to actually do the execution to see how hard or how easy it's going to be. Now, with respect to the defensive systems on that weapon system, I can't comment to that. I leave it to them. But just know that, again, my job is to synchronize that. I've got to be there when they need to be there. And if that's their weapon system of choice, we will absolutely adapt to support them.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Whitman. Mr. DeLuzio.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. General Van Ovost, Admiral Phillips, good morning. Unsurprisingly, I'm sure to many of you, our committee's broader work has focused on our strategic competition with the Chinese Communist Party and, frankly, the ever-increasing size of their fleet relative to ours, and that delta increasing, which is worrying to me and my colleagues, I'm sure, as well. Look, the inability to modernize our fleet and build ships on time, much less do the required maintenance, it concerns us. We are decommissioning ships faster than we can build them and maintain them, and we've seen drastic consolidation in the defense industry, including in shipbuilding and shipyards. It worries me. But to come back to the administration and Transportation Command, one of the things you said, General, that worried me, I saw in your testimony, the average age of our roll-on, roll-off military cargo ships being 44 years old, 17, I believe, being 50 years old or older. That's an aging fleet, which of course has increasing costs to maintain. We are, and similarly, much of our discussion today, Mr. Courtney mentioned it, and I'll dig in a bit too, relying on purchasing foreign-built, used ships rather than building them here. Put simply, without federal investment, additional federal investment, and strong investment, we will not have a sufficient fleet, and we'll need to rely on foreign ships, whatever it might be in our next conflict. It worries me. And so, Admiral Phillips, I'll start with you. As I explain this phenomenon to my constituents who can't understand it, please explain as plainly as you can, why is it that we've landed in a place where we have to purchase foreign-built ships rather than make them in this country?
Congressman DeLuzio, thank you for that question. To answer that question, you would need to be a student of history, and I could condense it simply by saying time and again within this country, in World War I, in World War II, we accelerated to build a fleet to support our needs in time of war, and when the time of war ended, that fleet was sold off, sent to other places, allowed to deteriorate. We are in a similar circumstance now with 45 Ready Reserve Force vessels and 85, as I've said, U.S. flag foreign trading vessels that are privately owned. That is essentially the extent of our capacity that will be able to support General Van Ovost's needs in time of war. So the challenge there is to have ships, you need to have mariners, to have enough manpower, you need to have ships that have cargoes to carry. All of these things have to go together to be able to ensure you support and sustain a fleet. You've asked briefly about maintenance. Our maintenance capacity, as you have described, our shipbuilding capacity has dwindled. It largely supports the Defense Department. However, as Congressman Courtney pointed out, the success of the NSMV program in Philadelphia and other programs, there are other yards capable of building such ships around the country, shows that this can be done here, and it can be done with a very successful outcome, as we are demonstrating with the NSMV.
Admiral, I want to pick up on that piece, that it can be done here. What does this committee, what does the Congress need to do to make that happen, to support that? Because I think it's a national security imperative that we do have the shipbuilding capacity, the maintenance capacity, to not have to rely on foreign-built vessels for our fleet.
Congressman, thank you for that question. I would refer to the authorization within the 2023 NDAA to construct 10 new vessels that it does not have an appropriation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. General, anyone to add to that? I think that's the direct answer.
It is, but let me just also just reinforce again what the administrator said about our Mariner force. Right now, I appreciate the full funding of the Maritime Security Program, the Tanker Security Program, cargo preference laws. All of them ensure that we can have a strong Mariner force. All of them buy down the operational risk that we're taking.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I now recognize Ms. Kiggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's great to see you again, General Van Ovost, and welcome to both of you. So I represent Virginia's 2nd Congressional District and a lot of shipbuilding, and I certainly, a lot of military and Navy there, and I certainly appreciate, the work you all do to transport our ships throughout the world. So doing some reading in preparation for this committee, I read about the turbo activation exercise from 2019, where the results of that exercise were 60% of those ships were considered ready, and then only 40% were able to steam out of port. Now, today, given that 17 of the 45 ships in the Ready Reserve Force are over 50 years old, are you confident that these vessels will be ready if immediately pressed into service? Do we learn things from that exercise that we've been able to correct now in the year 2023?
Thank you, Congresswoman, for that question. That is something that we take close track of. We just completed another turbo activation here in 2022 and provided that report. And this last turbo activation, I am more confident in our ability to assess the fleet. And some metrics have shown improvement, but it's only been about a year and a half since we've got the increased M&R funding, the readiness funding for those ships, and the targeted performance to planning that the Navy has done with MARAD to understand how to better target the health of each of these ships. So we have not yet seen that return on investment, but I do appreciate the Navy's investment, and they committed to us about a 20% increase in funding on that piece of it. And we did revise our strategy on which ships to activate as we're now able to use data more and more, as we're capturing more data and using data and analytics to understand which are the best ships to activate so we can get them up and running and test them versus ones that we know that might do just fine, right? So we want to target that work just like the performance to plan. And let me finally add that I appreciate a strong mariner force. They volunteered to do this. It's not easy to do a turbo activation, working very hard for 10 to 12 days, and then they're off the ship. So I appreciate them volunteering to do this work.
And I certainly want to just reiterate, Ranking Member Courtney and what he said about the, domestic production of our ships. And we have a lot of shipbuilding in my district as well. But, aside from funding, which you just mentioned about an NDA authorization, what are the other barriers to that domestic production that we could work on from this committee?
I'll pass that to the Merit Administrator.
Well, Congresswoman Kagan, thank you very much for your question. Certainly, barriers to domestic production include the cost of production, but also capacity. And I'd really like to land on capacity in particular. More broadly, as we work to repair, maintain the Ready Reserve Force, and build new vessels, we struggle with enough capacity within the country, with enough dry dock capacity, and that applies across both active duty military and Ready Reserve and Military Sea Lift Command, and other agencies as well, Coast Guard, Army Corps. We're all struggling and fighting for the same dry dock capacity, which is very limited. We're struggling for some of the same maintenance capacity and capabilities, and that impacts our ability to provide a ready force over time. And as ships age, that gets even more challenging. They spend more time in dock, more unusual, unexpected things come up. So additional capacity in maintenance and construction is an urgent need to continue to maintain a ready force here.
And if I may just interject, I know that last week we closed 4 of our West Coast dry docks, we have, I believe, 22 dry docks, so now we're down to 18, including the only West Coast dry dock that's able to service an aircraft carrier. So that was 22% of our dry dock capacity. So this is an issue that I believe we need to prioritize and highlight, because you're right. These are old ships. We're trying to keep at sea. We got to have places to repair them. So that issue of where are we going to build those dry docks and the maintenance, the manpower that goes with that, and that's something that I believe this committee needs to prioritize. Along those same lines, wanted to ask, I know both of you have talked about the manpower issue. Again, my district, heavy military. I've been in office almost 3 months now, and the only letter I have received from a parent that's complaining about a service academy is about the Merchant Marine Academy. And this was an issue with the superintendent, Joanne Noonan, and it was about, I believe, her covering up a painting at the academy. I just want to know if you all are aware of this. It was a Christ on the Water picture that the painting is covered. They are not allowed to use the room anymore. The parent who wrote to me was concerned about, and I too am concerned about recruitment and retention for our mariners. So it's the little things, right? The little things like this, but there's no room for this type of, and they thought it was a breach on their constitutional rights. This is a painting that I guess has traditionally been in the room. So I just wanted to know if you were aware of that issue and if anything was being done about it.
Thank you, ma'am, for that question, Mr. Chair. I will exceed my time, if I may, to continue. The painting, known as Christ on the Water, today is hanging in the astronaut Elliott MC room at the Merchant Marine Academy. It is uncovered. The display of that painting in that particular space, we believe, is a violation of the Establishment Clause. However, the room is currently not being used for official business. The painting is there, midshipmen can see it. Our intent in the long term is to relocate the painting to the chapel. We are making preparations to do that. Once there, it will be restored, and it will remain on
Admiral
view
Phillips.
for Academy midshipmen. Thank you.
Unfortunately, your time has expired. If you want to provide
Thank
a more
you, sir.
fulsome response for the record. Now recognize Mr. Vesey.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I wanted to ask Admiral Phillips, what is Murad's strategy for managing and maintaining the DoD's fleet of civilian crewed ships, and how does it ensure these assets are ready to support contingency operations?
Sir, thank you for that question. I believe you're referring to the Ready Reserve Force, 40 ships that we maintain and provide upon request for Transcom to support needs. I would offer that our current readiness of that fleet today is 76%, although it varies, and that is a high from the past several months. I would also offer that we have 8 of those vessels underway today, supporting not only Transcom needs, but also exercises and other needs around the globe. We continue, and we thank DoD for the additional support in the President's budget FY24 to expand maintenance capacity for this force, and we also thank DoD for its continuing support for the vessel acquisition program by which we are buying used vessels, and also thank this committee for the authorization to build new should that be needed. It is really a tripartite strategy that the Department of Defense would like to execute to ensure that we have a ready reserve to respond as required by Transcom's needs and the Department of Defense needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. General Van Ovost, I wanted to ask you, how is the moving of the household goods, the contract that there were some issues with back in 2020, 2021 timeframe, how is that going now?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We are, transforming the way we provide moving services to our families, and we are in the transition phase to the new contractor, to Home Safe. But as they begin to take on, they'll start after peak season this year. But we have not stopped with our improvements for our families. We have instituted some digital management tools. We have simplified the claims process. We've enhanced communications capability with help desks. So we are moving forward with improvements as we wait to bring them on. And we are meeting and partnering with Home Safe to ensure that they have the quality capacity necessary and the processes necessary. We're also training all of our service members, all the different service leads for movement, to make sure that they understand the new system and that they're improving their capabilities and training as well.
Yeah, what type of feedback are you getting?
So because the Home Safe has not yet moved any goods underneath that flag, there's nothing there, but we're getting great feedback on the improvements that we've made. In fact, we have a big spouses panel we bring them in. We also go to the services, and we have forums where we listen directly to their feedback, and we incorporate those changes into our program.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. I was also wondering if you can talk a little bit how Transcom is working to ensure readiness and resiliency of the global logistic networks, and what are you guys doing to modernize the network to meet the demands of future operations?
Thanks. Future operations is exactly what we think about all the time. Readiness is job one, and we need to be ready today and into tomorrow, and we do demonstrate that daily. In fact, I want to thank, we have been able to quickly respond to requirements around the globe, to include when Russia had a full-scale invasion into Ukraine. We were able to immediately deliver forces onto the continent to support the NATO eastern flank. But that was made possible so quickly due to European Defense Initiative. So I appreciate the support that allowed us to have a pre-po ship set there and opened up some fields and avenues for us. So we really leveraged European Deterrent Initiative, and this year in the budget you'll see Pacific Deterrent Initiative, which will do the same. It'll allow us to get posture, basing, pre-po, and support out in the Pacific so we can respond just as quickly to there. So that, of course, increases all of our readiness. But we are focused on the future. When I think about a contested environment, I think about secure command and control, having battle space awareness onto our assets, Cybersecurity is a major thing that we are looking at. We are very focused on that, both in the military and with our commercial partners. They have been working with us. They have contract compliance measures also that hardens their security, and they're partnering with us and CISA to ensure that they're a hard target. And of course, precision navigation and timing and survivability. Those are some of the things that we are working on to be able to ensure that we can be ready out into the future.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to thank each of you. Readiness and Seapower and Projection has never been more important. We have the global war on terrorism is continuing of 9/11. It continues unabated. But at the same time, we have competition between democracies with rule of law being opposed by authoritarians with rule of gun. And we see that with the murderous invasion by Putin, war criminal Putin, into Ukraine. We see the threats from the Chinese Communist Party to the 24 million people of Taiwan. And then we see the regime in Tehran continuing their capabilities of ICBMs to fulfill their hopes of vaporization of the people of Israel and vaporization of the people of America. And so what you're doing has just never been more important of providing for peace through strength. And so, General Van Ovost, I want to thank you and for your service and leadership in the U.S. Transportation Command. Especially, I'm grateful for the service of the members of the 437th Air Wing stationed at Joint Base Charleston from the Air Mobility Command that is under the command of TRANSCOM. Joint Base Charleston, my birthplace, is a great example of joint readiness across the force, and that is due to the leadership within TRANSCOM enterprise. However, we must always ensure our readiness remains high in order to counter the threats from peer competitors. Could you explain the key TRANSCOM mobility readiness concerns that hinders logistics enterprise and the ability to maintain global power projection to maintain peace through strength?
Thank you for the question. Having been stationed at Charleston, the mighty 437th, and have been on the ports there, you have a fantastic seaport there as well that really support us. So when I think about readiness, especially when I think about our strategic airlift fleet, it's very important that, that the services continue to fund the readiness funds and the flying hour funds, which you will see in this budget, to ensure a healthy C-5 and C-17 fleet. Now, the C-5 is showing its wear and aging, and I'm a little bit concerned about its readiness, so we need to continue to focus on that. The C-17 is doing great work, as you've seen around the globe in Afghanistan, Ukraine. The C-17 has been there, and it's a fantastic aircraft. But I think about our crews, right? Our people are a most important aspect of what we do, ensuring that they're trained and ready, so making sure that they have the flying hours, the simulator hours, and that they have the unique scenarios. And I don't just want to say from the air side, but from the sea side. We're training our mariners to be able to operate in a contested environment, to do consolidated refueling underway, and to use secure communications to ensure they understand the battle space. So all of that comes together to ensure a ready force, the people and the assets, and we're very focused on that.
And thank you, and I appreciate you referencing the Port of Charleston. They've just completed the dredging. 52 feet is now the deepest port on the East Coast. It also celebrates the largest export of cars from the United States worldwide. We want everybody to have a BMW X5 worldwide and a Volvo too, and then Sprinter vans on the side. So, so the Port of Charleston is just so invaluable. With that in mind, the chairman, being ahead of the curve, Chairman Mike Waltz, the lack of mariners. This has just got to be addressed, and what is being done to identify, again, institutions, training centers, opportunities to serve as mariners, and it's particularly critical because I hope also that projection is in place and pre-positioning of equipment. It concerns me that when it was announced that America was going to be providing 31 tanks to the people of Ukraine, it was reported that we had no more. And of course, I looked into it. We have 8,000 more. But it just really frightened the American people. And then how can we accelerate delivery?
Yes, sir. And I'll be brief in response to providing additional opportunities for mariners. As we've discussed earlier this morning, we have a Center of Excellence program. We can designate centers of excellence in support of mariner training. We also work closely with state maritime academies, which provide mariners for our force. And at Kings Point, the Merchant Marine Academy is overseen by the Maritime Administration. That's our predominant source of strategic sea lift officers. And of course, we work very hard to ensure we have as much capacity as possible there as well. And I will defer to the general on the additional circumstances.
We're working closely with the Army on the Abrams tanks and where they want to source them and how we're going to deliver.
Okay. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I recognize Mr. Panetta.
Outstanding. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Van Ovost, I was glad to see that you signed a charter with U.S. Southcom last June for regional humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Now, obviously, Latin America experiences a number of natural disasters, including earthquakes like we've seen in Haiti, unfortunately. However, looking at the Indo-Pacific, just between 2014 and 2017, that region appears to have more natural disasters than most, with 55 earthquakes, 217 storms and cyclones, and even 236 cases of severe flooding. It's these types of extreme weather conditions that I think, as you understand, pose considerable risk to our command and control and ability to mobilize troops and our domain awareness. And so I've been working with my colleagues, Mr. Gallagher, Mr. Scott, Mr. Jimenez, on legislation that would conduct tabletop exercises to test our current stockpiles and our abilities to deter threats in the Indo-Pacific while under these types of extreme weather conditions. General, what's your opinion as to whether or not we're properly accounting for these types of natural disasters in our strategy in dealing with the potential CCP invasion of Taiwan?
Thank you for that question. Having been an airlifter all of my life, I have been very focused on HADR events around the globe. And frankly, when I think about our ability to project and sustain a force around the globe, there's no greater opportunity than delivering hope to someone, right? Our allies are assured by the fact that we can be there once we commit to support them, just like we did during that devastating earthquake for Turkey, providing a hospital as well as the search and rescue crews are on the way within 24 hours. So we absolutely looked at it. In fact, we're doing additional exercises in the Indo-Pacific, specifically with the Philippines, providing HADR and looking at forward positioning HADR sets so that we would have immediate access from that point to move to any of the islands in support of them.
Okay. All right. Now, in regards to the challenges that we talked about, especially in the Indo-Pacific, if we were to conduct a whole-of-government tabletop exercise to prepare for climate events, what should that include from a transportation perspective? Is there anything in particular that you're focused on?
Absolutely. When we think about climate change and its effects on our infrastructure, we think of the ports or the rising sea levels. We have to ensure that we have plans, of which we do. For our strategic port programs, we do assessments through our Transportation Engineering Agency on strategic ports, providing them what we think are their vulnerabilities during high sea levels. And so being able to mobilize the force and deploy forward to a port to push out is one of our most concerning areas. And so as we look at that, what is that infrastructure, the road, the rail, and the seaport necessary to do that? And so I would say that should be part of the TTX.
Okay. Switching regions, looking at Africa, obviously with China's desire to, that they do have a military base in Djibouti, and now is looking to put a second one in Equatorial Guinea. On top of building out a military presence in Africa, the CCP is maneuvering around the continent through the Belt and Road Initiative, as we know about. I guess in looking at some of our allies, which is obviously one of your chief concerns in strengthening the relationships, at least to hedge against some of these threats from the CCP, but there are certain restrictions, obviously when it comes to security and the security environment in some of these countries. What have we done? How productive have we done? How productive have we been to prepare our African partners to not only deny Chinese gains, but is TRANSCOM integrating with AFRICOM to ensure that the assistance we offer is tailored to their needs and implemented?
Yeah, that's an important question, as you mentioned, not just in Africa, but around the globe, as China continues to use their malign influence to get into port infrastructure, and frankly, the digital Silk Road with their ability to use data management systems to infiltrate and then aggregate that data and send it back to China from the logistics flows, which is a key vulnerability. So we have been working a whole-of-government effort with State Department, Department of Commerce, to look at Chinese investments in Africa and around the globe, and marshaling U.S. resources to try to understand how can we limit that, how do we engage with that nation. But from a Transportation Command perspective only, we have a community of interest across the Intel committees with our allies and partners to demonstrate to them how important it would be that they do not let them invest in their ports.
Thank you, ma'am. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Jimenez is now recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You know, as mayor of Miami-Dade, we ran Port Miami, which is the cruise capital of the world, probably home to about 20 of the most beautiful cruise ships you're ever going to see. Admiral, do you know how many of those were built in the United States?
I do not directly know, sir, but I suspect none.
Zero. Zero were built in the United States. And so I believe, Mr. Chairman, that the problem that we have is not only that we don't have the production capacity, and there's no reason why it can't be built in the United States. Those cruise ships, actually, a lot of them are built in Europe. So you really can't say it's cheap labor costs. Something else is going on. Why ships are not being built in the United States. Difference between now and the time between World War I and World War II is America probably led the world in shipbuilding in that time. That's why we were able to ramp up so quickly during World War II and basically outproduce everybody. And we were the arsenal of democracy because we produced everything. We don't do that anymore. And so my advice or my ask of you, Mr. Chairman, is that we look at the committees of jurisdiction and see what it is that we're doing here in the United States to shut down production or stymie the production of the things that we need and we know we need for producing the materials that we need to conduct the war. And so shifting gears a little bit, Admiral, you said that we have a shortage of mariners. Is a career in a maritime career, is that a career that somebody can have a good quality of life, a good, you know, middle class quality of life? A mariner? Does it pay well?
Yes, sir, it pays well. However, you have to go to sea.
Okay, I understand that. Do you need a college degree to be a mariner?
You do not need a college degree to be a mariner.
Okay, you said that you're looking at shortages right now. How many mariners do we need now, and how many mariners are we going to need in the future?
Our numbers are based on a study that was done in 2017, which was directed by Congress, and shows we're short at least 1,800. We would expect that number to grow over time.
To what?
I will take that for the record, sir, but we don't know. It all depends on what our needs are in the future.
Where do you get them from now, the mariners?
Get them from our 6 state maritime academies. We get them from Kings Point, our primary source of mariners, licensed mariners with a Naval Reserve obligation. And we get them from union schools across the country, which support both licensed and unlicensed mariners.
What are you doing to address the shortage?
We are working across a whole of government, and as I've described previously, this is a whole of government and industry and other stakeholder challenge. We are, under the Biden-Harris administration, growing the fleet. As I've said, we need more ships. If you want to have a sustained career path for more mariners, TSP program will help us with that. We're building the NSMV program, which will support mariner training at our 5 of our 6 state maritime academies with brand new state-of-the-art vessels. We're working with industry and other stakeholders to develop options and opportunities to do more, to advertise this as a path that young people can take to move forward. And we're working on safety at sea. I described the Embark program earlier in this hearing, sir. As you know, safety at sea is absolutely paramount for us, and in particular, women are underrepresented in the maritime industry. So 50% of our population is only represented by about 7% of the population within the maritime industry. So be able to recruit more people to come into this industry, earn a good living, as you say, and stay with it over time for a career is absolutely paramount.
Are these schools located in a certain area of the country, or are they all over the place?
They're located all over the country.
Are there any in South Florida?
Yes. Well, the American Maritime Officers facility is located in Dania Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you work with high schools or do you advertise this?
We do work with high schools, yes, sir.
Okay, because one of the things that I'm working on down in my town is that we have a real big shortage of pilots, and working with the school system there, trying to see if we can open up charter schools or magnet schools that deal with aviation. Maybe we should be doing the same thing around the world with maritime and the maritime industry. Because, again, one of the things that we want to stress is that you don't need a college degree. And you can actually have a very good career without saddling yourself with $500,000 in debt and give your family a good quality of life. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. Ms. Takuda is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that Transcom was not handling global bulk fuel distribution at the time of the fuel leak that we experienced in Hawaii at Red Hill. But since the leak last year's NDAA appointed Transcom as a single manager of bulk fuel. Even as we move towards defueling and the permanent closure of Red Hill, bulk fuel posture will remain a focus for Hawaii, given, as we've discussed often in this room, Hawaii's strategic location in the Indo-Pacific theater. General Van Ovost, as Transcom is planning and preparing to be the single manager of global bulk fuel, what are the implications of a contested environment on bulk fuel capacity distribution?
Thank you, Congresswoman. Look, being the manager for global bulk fuel, a single manager, it's a different approach to managing fuel. It allows us to synchronize a complex system of systems to ensure we can get from source to the point of need in a contested environment. So we're going to be operating differently in the contested environment. So we're looking at things in the posture in the Pacific, and how we plan and in how we execute. We had multiple studies and war games that came to this conclusion that we had multiple gaps. And I would say that we're attacking those gaps, the first of which is the tanker security program, which is buying down some of the risk. But we're also doing fuel planning with Admiral Aquilino in the Pacific, where we need to posture that fuel, where we need to store it, to include storing on the water, so that it'd be the most effective location. And then we have resilient locations, so that if one is lost, we still have others to be able to feed the fight.
Thank you. But would you please also provide, given all of the work that you have done, the timeline for executing the new bulk fuel posture, and when Transcom will provide an update on the distribution at work to members of this committee?
Yeah, thank you. We are working with INDOPACOM and doing the bulk fuel assessment now, and multiple engagements with them. We expect that we should have this done by early fall, in which case we'll bring back to Admiral Aquilino, and we'll work with the department to the finalize of the posture, and of course with DLA as well, who is a key partner in all of this, and to where the locations need to be. It'd probably be a mixture of contractor-owned, contractor-operated, all the way to government-owned, government-operated, both on the land and on the water.
Thank you. If I could just move on with the remainder of my time to military sea lift in the Indo-Pacific. You know, our sea lift capacity to move materials and troops out into the Western Pacific is critical to our ability to deter aggression and, if necessary, sustain and win any conflict that may occur. However, we've seen our country's capacity to build large commercial ships useful for sea lift purposes decline in recent decades. We've had this discussion, leading to a major shortage of these ships that meet a critical national security need. At the same time, we also have a shortage of skilled certified mariners, and we've talked a little bit about it today, that can operate these ships in a surge environment during an extended major conflict. General, what are the implications and risks that the current situation poses to our national security, especially our ability to deter foreign aggression in the Indo-Pacific?
Yeah, thank you for that question. This is something we think about all the time as we do the assessment of our sea lift capacity against the national defense strategy. And that is how we set the limit for the number of ships and, frankly, the number of square feet of capability we need to have in the ready reserve force, and also why it's so important that we have the Maritime Security Program and now the Tanker Security Program to bring our civilian capacity to bear. So we are managing that between civilian and military, but I tell you that it's very important that we maintain readiness, which is why we need to ensure the sea lift recapitalization rate is steady, so that we can gain the readiness back of the ships, so we can gain the capacity back.
Thank you. And Rear Admiral Phillips, not to leave you out of this discussion, how can we protect and build up our commercial sea lift capacity while also developing the workforce needed to sustain an expanded capacity?
Ma'am, thank you for that question. And as General Van Ovost has stated, the two go together. In order to provide more billets for mariners to man, you need more ships for them to sail into or work into. So what we do to expand our U.S. flag fleet, including, as the General has discussed, maintaining MSP and CSP, but also expanding TSP, the Tanker Security Program, that provides more billets for mariners. And in that context, over time, we find that we have additional capacity, and that helps us not only meet our needs for national and economic security, but continue to expand our capacity for both mariners on the commercial and on ready reserve force side.
Thank you. I yield back my time.
Recognize Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Van Ovost, it was great visiting with you last week in our office. One of the things we discussed was your focus on infrastructure and how it impacts TRANSCOM's ability to provide power projection capabilities to the Joint Force. We were talking about the conditions of roads and ports and railways and pipelines and all the rest. It's critically important for these transportation routes around the country. So I wonder if you'd just say a quick word about the importance of those components to achieving TRANSCOM's mission and anything that Congress can do to ensure these lanes receive adequate consideration for funding to ensure that you're able to provide the power projection capabilities to the force.
Thank you for that question. Through the Transportation Engineering Agency, we look very closely at the roads, the railway, and the seaports, and our ability to go from a power projection platform to a seaport and push out in time of national crisis. And frankly, our adversaries are also looking at this as well, because if they could stop us here in the United States, where we have 85% of our force elements, then we cannot respond and we cannot deter. So I am concerned about the national infrastructure. It is sufficient today, but I'm watching it crumble. So especially as we're working with the Federal Highway Administration on the about 6,000 miles of roads that are really important for us for national security, I asked for your support to provide an authorization in the NDAA that promotes the consideration of military needs when prioritizing the funding on public highways. That would be very important for us to recapitalize. Of course, it also provides an economic benefit, but as we look and we rack and stack the priorities to ensure that we can get a free flow multiple ways from our power projection platform to a seaport, and we outline those areas, we ask that the states actually follow through and apply for those grants and support.
Thank you. We can't lose sight of the importance of that. Admiral Phillips, I'd like to ask you briefly about Title 11 ship financing, that program. It's my understanding that authorizations and appropriations for that program have remained relatively consistent for the past several years. Is that right?
It is, yes, sir.
And looking at the data from MARAD on the website, it appears that there are several large shipbuilding contracts coming up that are looking to utilize Title 11, and many of these ships look like they'll qualify for the preference given to vessels for offshore wind construction and maintenance. So can you talk to us very briefly about the military usefulness of ships built using Title 11 financing in that program, and whether increased attention to that program from Congress would alleviate some of the challenges that we've been talking about today?
So, sir, thank you for that question. Title 11 supports a number of different kinds of ships. Right now, we have designated offshore wind vessels, vessels of national interest, and as we may do, as we have the authority to do under that program, they are the first vessels such designated or so designated, and we do, in fact, have a considerable amount of interest there. However, we have interest in other vessels as well, and are working a total of 7 different opportunities right now, loan applications in the Title 11 program. So Title 11 can do all kinds of things. We have approximately $35 million in the program right now, which will allow us to support up to $475 million worth of additional borrowing capacity. And we've seen an uptick in interest in that program over the last year, caused by a number of things. Certainly there's an interest in offshore wind, but also interest rates are changing, and this program provides some additional capacity there.
Thank you. A less comfortable question is about the controversy at the Merchant Marine Academy with the painting. And I just want to know, is it true that while the superintendent of the academy there, Admiral Joanna Noonan, made a decision to cover the historic painting Christ on the Water that's hung on the wall of a room of the Merchant Marine Academy for nearly 80 years, she made the decision to cover it initially, but she also approved and endorsed, I'm told, a prominent display to promote and celebrate, quote, different sexualities and gender identities. Are you aware of that? Is that true?
Thank you for that question, sir. Certainly I'm aware of both issues. The painting is problematic because it expresses a specific preference of religion.
Well, let me
and
stop you.
The other wall is less problematic because
okay, hang on just a second. Apparently, she also said that she explained that all this is her effort to promote a culture change at the academy. And I'm a former First Amendment lawyer. I used to defend religious freedom. I can tell you that is not a violation of the Establishment Clause. And anybody who told you that doesn't know what they're talking about. They need to read the court cases. But there's a group of alumni and parents that are deeply concerned about this because they think all this shows a hostility towards religion, and it may affect recruiting efforts at the school. I'm almost out of time, but I think these things need to be top of mind because we're all talking about the crisis in recruitment, and if you show a hostility towards a large group of students and the religious heritage of the institution, I think that has a negative effect on it. So if you can respond, I'm out of time, but if you'd respond to that.
Thank you, sir. There is no hostility towards religion at the Academy. There are quite a few affinity groups that are religious-based that are very active. In addition to that, as described by Congress, there are other affinity groups that we have been tasked under the NAPA report, which you may be familiar with, to elevate and expose and talk about. And the wall in question is a wall that supports affinity groups across the Academy and provides notice of their activities, at which we were directed by Congress to specifically consider as one of the NAPA report recommendations, specifically highlighted to address post-2023 NDAA.
Gentleman's time has expired. Recognize Mr. Norcross.
Thank you. We have had discussions on my last two committees, from strat forces to workforce and education, talking about the next generation workforce. Certainly in the remarks that you had earlier, we're talking about that unknown of when's the next generation. We've seen capacity for shipbuilding in our country diminish over the last 50 years, but certainly the last 10. I just want to jump on the discussion that Mr. Courtney had with you concerning the projects going on at the Philly yard. And quite frankly, I was shocked when I heard that that ship was within 1% of their budget. But putting all that aside, capacity to build things in this country has been diminished. And certainly the shipyards, whether private or public, are part of that equation. Ms. Phillips, if you could talk to us about why we wouldn't expand on a program that is successful and use the capacity that is being built, but also is learning to do this in such a way that, you know, quite frankly, we're not seeing much of that anymore. To go for a private company to go out on a limb and invest this, but more importantly, the workforce, which takes years to develop. Why aren't we looking at that to expand the program that was set into place in another model?
So, sir, thank you for that question. If you are asking in the context of the way the NSMV is being built, the Vessel Construction Manager Program, which is successful.
Yes. But it's the workforce behind it that we are developing as a country that is something that is very much in need. And the fact that that program so far, by any measurement we're getting, is working quite well.
So, sir, I agree with you certainly that it is working quite well, and the way to continue to expand that capacity is to continue to expand the opportunities to build vessels in U.S. shipyards. And, of course, Philly has shown that they have this capacity and they have this ability and they have orders passed, the 5 ships that we will build for them, which I would consider a success. The challenge is, what are the next opportunities to provide capacity for yards and orders for yards so that they may continue to build and develop this workforce as well?
Right, buying new ship is not going to get us there for the next generation, but I just wanted to reiterate how important that is to build that capacity. We talk about research and development for so many of the items, incredibly important, but the one that takes the longest and is most fragile is our physical workforce. So thank you. General, let's talk about our flying tankers. And you might have addressed it when I wasn't here, but would you give us the most recent update on the visual system on the KC-46 and when we reasonably can expect that to be employed not only for those that are already in service, but those that are coming off the line?
Yeah, thanks for that question. First, I want to thank the Air Force for submitting the budget. We have 15 KC-46s in the budget to continue the multi-year program. The remote visual system, next generation of that is in work. They have tested it. Our boom operators have tested it, and they like it. I'm looking forward to them placing it onto production airplanes and to cut in about the 25-26 timeframe. Until then, I was happy that the Air Mobility Command commander did authorize full employment of the KC-46. In fact, we are flying the KC-46 around the globe. I have it for tasking authority. And we're using it, and they're asking for it in many of the high-end exercises because of its incredible capabilities. So I am optimistic, but until we get the full capability of the airplane, I am concerned about just maintaining readiness and making sure that we can continue to get crews trained and qualified. As you know, we're transitioning from KC-10s and KC-135s into that, so keeping the pipeline going and keeping the readiness overall of the fleet to include the KC-135s, which we must be focused and do targeted modernization and readiness programs, which the Air Force is supporting.
So the boom operators who are working with the system that's presently in place, early on there was concern, and notably so, but they're liking it and they're enjoying the ability to do what they're doing under the current visual system, because now we are moving towards the next generation. Would you say that the operators, the boom operators, are working well with the system that's in place?
The boom operators are able to function with the system in place. It's not optimal, and that's why we absolutely are pressing Boeing to get the new visualization system in as soon as possible.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Norcross. Mr. Moylan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses contacting my office ahead of time and having good discussions. I appreciate that. So this question going out for both of you, please. Of course, I'm focused on the island of Guam and Indo-Pacific area, right? And so I would like to know, what are the benefits of utilizing Guam as a forward staging area, given that it is part of the United States? I mean, we were talking about our allies, but Guam is part of the United States, despite the proximity to East Asia. And the importance, and if you can also touch on some timelines that, of course, I know you know about, and if there's any red tape that we should be concerned about to expedite the process on ensuring that Guam is well protected for our national defense.
Thank you for that question. Guam has received a lot of attention for a great reason. It is absolutely a key part of our programs, and it provides us a forward location from which we'll get additional access spacing and overflight to be able to work more readily with our partners out in the Pacific. So I thank you for your support. A lot has been going on with respect to Guam. The air defense system, you've seen it in the FY24 budget and in the unfunded priority request by Admiral Aquilino to ensure that we have adequate defenses there as they're building up there on the base and multiple layers. That gives us the resilience. You see us reposturing both air, land, and sea assets to be able to use Guam most effectively. And so that's been very helpful. I think about our ability to, as I think about reposturing fuel in the Pacific, as well as pre-positioning, it also provides us a great location to work from. So we could not do it without. When we talk about geometry of the battle, that's a key geometric location.
Thank you, General. In that line also with U.S. Transcom, the role that you play in ensuring that the civilian population of the U.S. citizens in Guam is reliably supplied in times of war and other disasters. My colleague from California talked about the disasters and how helpful we will be to, especially like our allies. You discussed about in the Philippines some exercises that we were doing in that concern too. I'm interested in the exercises that we would have for Guam, especially in natural disasters. We're in that belt where we have the typhoons and earthquakes as well. And unfortunately, we don't have the land supply. We can't truck things in. We can't do much other than using your effective forces to ensure that the civilian population of less than 170,000 are well taken care of as well, also with our military presence there too. We all share one resource there, power, water, and food supplies, and we're reliant upon one another. So I'm hoping you can help me understand on how you project that would help out, and if there's any, of course, the timelines that we're concerned with, and any red tape that we can help reduce.
As you mentioned, we have a number of exercises that we do out in the Pacific that are humanitarian assistance, disaster response oriented, and we have kits that are forward deployed. And I will defer. I could take that question for the record, but I really would work with INDOPACOM because I don't have the numbers of exercises and the timing of those exercises. But from a Transcom perspective, when I think about the infrastructure at Guam, I think about your ability to withstand high seas and typhoons. And as we build to new standards, we build climate control, we build to the standards of hurricanes or typhoons so that they will be able to withstand those operations. But I will have to take that one for the record.
Thank you, General. And Rear Admiral, what would you say would be some of the most useful improvements to Guam's ship repair capacities for the Military Sea Lift Command? You know, of course, we understand with Admiral Aquino, we had the fuel issue as well, but specifically just talking about the ship repair facilities. At one time, that was a very big industry on the island. It's no longer, but with our strategic location, what is your feelings on that? Would this be helpful? And are we behind the time frame, or do we have some red tape issues that we have to address?
Congressman Merlin, thank you very much for that question, sir. In the context of ship repair, particularly in response to DoD needs, certainly as you are aware, I've been stationed there in the past on a U.S. Navy ship. However, I would defer for current state of repair and the needs of DoD to the Department of Defense. Certainly, we appreciate the circumstances surrounding the need for that capacity on the island of Guam, and appreciate your interest and support in it. I think I'd defer to the General for additional context.
And I would defer to the Navy, so we'll have to take that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Moyle. And recognize Ms. Mace.
Thank you, and I want to thank the chairman and ranking member for this hearing today. I want to thank our witnesses for being with us as well. General and Rear Admiral, appreciate your time today. South Carolina's 1st Congressional District is a critical location, as you all know, for Transcom and MRAD. Due to its strategic location, extensive transportation infrastructure from I-95 to the Port of Charleston to Joint Base Charleston. The Port of Charleston is one of the busiest ports in the U.S. and is a critical hub for the movement of cargo and personnel. It's a deep water harbor and has significant gateway for U.S. Transcom sea-based logistics operations, including the transport of military equipment and supplies, including in January of this year when more than 60 Bradleys were shipped overseas as part of the aid package to Ukraine. Additionally, Joint Base Charleston is a key U.S. military installation providing support for all branches of the military, including U.S. Transcom. It's home to the 628th Air Base Wing, which provides support services for U.S. Transcom's airlift and refueling operations. We're home to the C-17 Globemaster IIIs, which participated in many of the airlift evacuations out of Afghanistan. General, my first question today is for you. You stated in your testimony the Joint Deployment Distribution Enterprise relies on both government and commercially owned and operated infrastructure. Our #1 pacing threat, the PRC, continues to leverage the commercial industry and operate in a very gray zone in some cases. As the Transcom commander, how are you looking at technology, cybersecurity, AI, technological innovations to ensure your mission in protecting and sustaining all combat operations isn't interrupted or threatened by, the PRC and their continued aggression?
Yeah, thank you. I am concerned about PRC activities, their continued espionage, their coercion, and especially as they use cyber in space. With respect to the significant amount that we depend on our commercial partners, we have been working with them to ensure cybersecurity standards on their networks so that they can defend themselves, safeguard defense information. And through our contracts, they annually assess against what are loosely the NIST standards, and they provide us reports on their hardening. And we also collaborate with them, and we read them in, and we also share intelligence. And they're able to leverage the no-cost cybersecurity options that the Cyber Collaboration Center and the DIB cybersecurity program offer them. So I think we've made some really good headway. The C-suites are paying attention to it, and it's really been important. And we see it because, as you know, I have great examples right now with Russia, Ukraine, with Russia in cyber, and they want to slow down logistics flow, right? So let me just add that the intelligence that's collected via the FISA 702 program has really been proven to be a vital tool for us to understand where the enemy is. And that FISA 702 is going to expire at the end of this year. So I would appreciate consideration for how do we keep those kinds of authorities available, because it's a significant amount of intelligence we're getting from the FISA 702. I think about AI. Again, my ability to respond to the greatest need requires me to be able to sense all the ports, see all of the assets in motion, and then predict the requirements of the joint force wherever they might be based on if there's a hurricane somewhere or if there's a conflict going on somewhere. So I use AI and data. Nirvana would be that I would see and sense everything and be able to maneuver the force fluidly to respond.
Are you able to do that now? I mean,
we are not able to do that now. That's a high-level requirement, but we're working with Advana. We have an instantiation of data and analytical tools, and we're going to bite this elephant, one at a time, right?
What do you need to get there? What will it take?
Yeah, what we're doing right now is exposing the data and grabbing the data, structuring it so that we can use it. We have the data. It's just we're pulling it together. We've been working with the Department of Defense on their AI data accelerator, and we're using their resources, so I'm very appreciative of that. And then eventually, when we have our own program, we will probably require a little more manpower and some funds for analytical tools, but I don't have that requirement this year.
Got it. Thank you so much, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Mace. Again, I want to thank you both. These are incredibly important issues. In the 5 years that I've been here, we have all been, I think Mr. Chairman Kelly shares my concern. We have all been pulling our hair out on the criticality in your shortages and your needs. Particularly in the Sea Lift fleet. We are determined, I was just talking to some of the staff, to press our appropriations colleagues on getting you the appropriations that you need and continuing to get you the authorities that you need to rebuild much of what is atrophied over the years. With that, the hearing is adjourned.